Right. I'd like to go ahead and open the Tuesday, February 5th, 2019 Warrenton Board of Alderman meeting. If you would, please rise with us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item would be the consent agenda.
We have the regular and executive session minutes from January 15th, 2019.
I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Alderman Schultz, second by Alderman Shell Harvey. Roll call vote.
Alderman Deloy,
Yes.
Alderman Schultz,
Yes.
Alderman Shell Harvey,
Yes.
Alderman Costello is not here, Alderman Ock,
Yes.
Alderman Miller.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 with one absent. Next, we'll be hearing from the public. If you have anything you'd like to discuss or any comments you'd like to make, we ask that you come to the podium, state your name. We'll give you 5 minutes to speak. And we'll either have rebuttal comments or no comments at all. Not seeing anybody, we'll move on. Next will be the Board of Alderman comments.
The only thing I have, I would like to thank Terry for giving us the information on the Downtown Association deal. And I take it that Bob and Stacy and that group have access to that same thing?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks a lot. That was very informative.
You're welcome.
Mayor, I met with Downtown Merchants Association a couple of weeks ago. They were planning the 2019 events that are going to be taking place downtown. The newest festival that they're going to come up with is the Fruitings Fest, which used to be held here a number of years ago, a spring festival, and I believe it's going to be in May. And they are looking forward to the town hall meeting that's going to be taking place in March, I believe. They're going to meet at the school, and they're inviting this Missouri Main Street Association is going to be there, and they're inviting the entire community to that event. The membership talked about wanting to include the entire community into what we're doing downtown. They believe that for Warrenton downtown to be healthy, it's going to take a concerted effort by the entire community. Because after all, downtown is the heartbeat of Warrenton. And I believe that's probably a good idea. But anyway, they were very excited to have the committees together to take care of the different aspects of putting these events together. They've come a long way from when they started a year ago. So anyway, that's the latest from them.
Good. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Next will be the mayor's comments. Once again, I just want to reiterate, apologize for running so late, but met with a couple from Wentzville who just really had a lot of great things to say about our aquatic center, and that they preferred to come here because it was more affordable and just a little smaller, so they didn't feel so lost in the crowd with their children for swimming lessons. And it was just good to sit down and visit with somebody who doesn't live in our community that's actually said it's, they found it easy to get to, they found it very convenient, and they liked all the amenities we had inside there for their children to be able to be there. So, there's people outside our community that like it as well. And you always hear the positive and the negative, and sometimes on social media, you hear more negative than positive these days. But, you know, when you sit down and take the time face to face, a lot of people have a lot of positive things to say about the stuff that we have provided and that we continue to provide, or at least encourage businesses and what be it that come in. So I always love hearing the positive things that go on. Next is the discussion topic of the utility trailer parking. Anybody want to lead us off on this?
Sure.
All right.
Last meeting, you all discussed the need to at least consider having some changes in code that would regulate the utility trailer parking on the street. We got a committee together made up of the chief and the lieutenant, the previous code enforcement under Mike, and Neil from Planning and Zoning, and discussed all the possibilities. They had done a lot of research from other cities to try to see how they're dealing with trailers on the street. So what you have in your Dropbox is a compilation of all of those discussions and recommendations to use at least for a starting point for your discussion. Some cities are much less supportive of trailers, and their code is much more strict. We try to be middle of the road and consider those people that, you know, need to be able to load and unload trailers at their homes. At the top of that sheet, you have what is currently in our code book in regard to utility trailers, which says that they have to be parked in the side or the backyard only. It doesn't address them being in the street or how long they could be in the street, so certainly we need to expand upon that. And here we try to discuss both trailers that are attached to a licensed vehicle and the trailers that are not attached to licensed vehicles. So really this is just to help you in starting up your discussion, and whatever we decide we'll need to put into ordinance format for a future meeting, but at least this is to get the discussion started.
So I get two questions. One is, do we get a lot of complaints about this from the public?
I would have to answer that question. That I have never received a complaint. I don't know about the police department, but it is not something that we regularly are dealing with complaints on.
So then the second question I would have is, what are we trying to accomplish? In other words, are we trying to pass something that, because we're concerned about public safety, because we're concerned about just safety in the community, we're concerned about aesthetics on the streets, where some people may think a trailer sitting across the street from their home devalues their home. I mean, what is the goal of what we're trying to shoot for?
I'll answer that. Some of it is safety issue. I haven't received numerous complaints, but I have received some complaints, especially this past couple snows where people had stuff sitting out there and the plow wasn't able to plow around it, or because of the trailer being in the way, their mailbox or part of their driveway may have not been cleared as well by the road, and it caused a lot of ice issues and problems. Like I said, it's not a tremendous amount of complaints, but it was enough to bring it up.
So when you get complaints, is that something that generally the police address by, so in other words, if somebody's parked in a way that's unsafe, then obviously I would think logically an officer could come by and say, you know, we have a safety concern, could you move your vehicle?
Correct.
If people are blocking the street and snow plows are going by, they're supposed to be off the street if it's a snow route,
Right.
then that's addressed.
But it's not, the areas that.
The areas aren't snow routes.
Because I asked them that.
Okay.
You know, because I know that in general, we've had good, at least that I know of, we've had good success with, if we ask them, they move it in a snow route. But it's not a snow route. I think a lot of this, some of it stems back to, even though they may be trailers, it's still a safety issue with a kid or what be it, can be there. I'm not saying that that's part of the complaint, but I can see some of that issue when they bring that up.
Because, I mean, it would seem like Mike has a picture on his phone he showed tonight. There's some streets that are very narrow, like McKinley is an example of one. where there's ditches on either side, where a vehicle, whether it's a trailer attached or anything attached, and there's two vehicles parked almost next to each other, it makes it almost impossible to go by. So you would say you'd want one ordinance for that area, but then on a real wide street, you know, then maybe that wouldn't make sense. So you're dealing with different situations.
But, and I guess we could go through street by street, but I think last time we discussed this on a general issue, if we made it overall throughout the city and we're flexible and are met in the road, we're meeting in the middle of the road with some of the options, instead of just saying, no, you can't park on the street or what be it, but putting limitations on how long, I think that's what we were looking at doing. Because I think the alderman that originally brought this up, brought it up for one street in town. And I've gotten complaints from before, but we didn't have an ordinance set up for it. So it's kind of one of those things that, okay, if it's a total safety issue, I can, like a fire or ambulance can't get down the street, I get it.
Right.
But if it's just one parked out there, we don't have an ordinance pertaining to making that person move the vehicle or the trailer.
Well, it's certainly not listed here, but there, I mean, if the trailer was parked in a place where you couldn't see around, it was safety, we do have ordinances that allow the police to ask them to move, right?
Correct.
So it's not really in the zoning area, it's more in, you know, I guess the safety code
The
issues
safety
in that area. I mean, because I get mixed feelings. I can see both sides of the argument. You know, we have a gentleman who runs a business out of his home who has a trailer parked on the street, you know, when he's not working all night long, whatever else. So it makes the street very narrow. You have to slow down and be careful. Maybe you should slow down and be careful anyway.
Sure.
And then the other side of the argument is if that individual having that trailer there overnight is doing it to produce income because that's his livelihood, and you don't want to deprive him of that either.
No, and I understand that.
So-
But I think some of these is addressing people that don't want to take up their driveway space or any other space, so they park it out there and they leave it out there only when the only time it moves is when they're putting a recreational vehicle on it to go out to the park. The rest of the time, it stays in the street on the city street park.
So they're using it as storage.
Yeah, basically. And I've only seen a few, maybe a handful of them that do that, but there again,
Probably the only way you control that is by time limit,
restraints.
putting on the street. But I know when I lived on McKinley, cars, that should be a no parking street, period.
It's narrow.
Very narrow.
But I mean, I also get Alderman Ock's perspective of, you don't want to deprive somebody of their business if that's what they do, is they either move stuff or that's their business, even if they're just starting it to move to something different. I understand that level, but I mean, that's why I think, like you said, the time limit restriction is what kind of, where we're at, like it's 48, 72 hours, don't know how to, I think this is more targeting the people that leave it out there for a long period of time and use it as a parking spot for.
So how do you control when they parked it versus what length of time it's been there? You more, you know, we
Our
done.
tires.
Let me defer.
Well, we used to do that downtown.
Yeah, I remember when I
for
worked
hours.
downtown, they used to mark
That
tires.
was a nightmare.
Yeah.
And it would be.
Alderman
Be difficult to
Ock,
enforce.
Comments about, you know, is it safety issue, is it appearance? And I would say it's all of the above, because I think, you know, when we have I can remember the citywide yard sale, and I can remember, you know, there's a lot of people, especially at Walton, participate in that. And I remember that, you know, there were a couple trailers parked out there then. So you got people coming to the city from out of town, they see that, you know, do they, you know, that's, what kind of image does that present? Or when the fall festival is going on, and people want to park over there, and they see that. And so I agree, I can see both sides of it from a businessman's standpoint, but I also see the safety issue, the appearance issues, and all that, so. And I know Alderman Delaware made a comment before earlier, we were talking about, he said, I don't know that we could make it for certain streets because they're wider or narrower. I don't know that we can do that. I think if we do an ordinance, have an ordinance, it has to be citywide. Otherwise, it looks like we're maybe discriminating against.
We're talking about something different here than the camp trailer that we got off of Dogwood, right? With the utility trailers now as opposed to that.
Just like in Fifth
That
Wheel,
unit was
I think he's talking
required to get
about
off the
Fifth
street
Wheel.
now.
Yeah, there's a separate
trailer.
section of ordinance
Right.
related to vacation vehicles.
But I think Counselor would agree, we could pick streets that we wanted to put certain restrictions on and others we couldn't
Yeah,
without
absolutely. I mean,
feeling discriminatory in any way.
yeah, you do that with parking on one side of the street. If it's, what you guys have done in the past is, you send the chief out if it's a narrow street. He makes a recommendation as far as where to put the parking restriction on a particular street. Yeah, you can do it. It's public safety. They're your streets.
That's the time I'm going.
Dogwood's a pretty wide street, right? Would you agree to that? And the first car is parked on both sides, which they commonly do. It's pretty snug getting through there. And that's a pretty wide street.
So,
Sometimes there's a trailer hooked on the back of that truck that's parked there right opposite the other car on the other side of the street.
But if we pick the streets and, say no parking vehicles or trailers, would that not solve the utility trailer issue we're talking about?
Like no parking whatsoever?
Yeah, like
See-
McKinley?
No, and I get it. I'm gonna defer back to Alderman Ock, and I'm gonna say, I mean, I get sometimes if it's there for less than a 24-hour period and you're loading something up, or a friend comes by to pick you up, we go out to a park and picks, wants to take and park our SUVs or UTVs here just for overnight, and we're leaving in the morning. I mean, I get that they have to slow down and go around as long as it's not restrictive of vehicles trying to get by at all. You know what I'm saying? Like, they can still get by.
I mean, my gut on this would be that we would first do something with the time issue and see if that makes a difference. So if the concern is people using the public street as a storage place for their camper or whatever they have, then I think we put a time restriction on that. So 72, I don't know how the chief enforces it. And then if that doesn't rectify the problem, then try something else.
Well, and I agree with that. And the other reason why, and I'm sorry I didn't mention this earlier, I'm sure we've all encountered it. If somebody has a trailer parked across on the street, across from you backing out of your driveway, it now becomes a limitation, issue for you to back out of your driveway at times. That is something that was brought up is, they didn't want to cause waves with their neighbors, but at the same time, it's really restrictive for them to be able to get out of the driveway when it's parked, almost in a permanent manner. I don't know.
You're talking strictly drop trailers. You're really not talking about somebody pulls up there and leaves it hooked up. I mean, where do you draw the line?
We've already got that covered.
You're talking about, well, actually, I think they addressed that in this one, if it's attached. If attached
Yeah,
to a
for
licensed vehicle.
purposes of lawn care or, right? Or
Right.
power washing a house and then it's gonna be gone. Not to park it there at noon and it sits there for 2 days.
And that's why it's a not to exceed 24-hour
Okay.
parked on a residential street.
And there's no magic to these time periods. It's
They
just,
can be played with.
sure, a starting point. The one thing that I think we really have to make sure that we think about is doing it by complaint driven, because we don't want officers out spending time driving around talking tires on trailers.
Right.
And if it's an issue and if it's impeding the neighbors or impeding traffic, then if we get the complaint, then we can go out and work on the enforcement side of it. Understanding, anytime you put a time limit on it, you're gonna get those individuals that wanna play the game, because this happens with the vacation vehicles. And so it's never gonna be an exact science. because you're gonna have those people that move it 5 feet
Sure.
and now believe that, you know, now they get another
3 days.
72 day,
Mhm.
2 hours or whatever. So anything that we do is going to be somewhat subject to trying to enforce it as best we can.
Well, and some, like every ordinance, sometimes you have to polish it up a little bit.
Yeah.
You learn from the experience that's out there and the more complaints you get. I guess my question is, I think Chief's been around long enough and done that long enough. How was that chopping those tires back in the day?
It's, one of our favorite duties.
Feel well.
Well, let me make it, what you're suggesting is we pass some kind of ordinance that would give the chief, the police department, the ability to have a vehicle moved in certain circumstances, but we really don't enforce it unless there's a complaint. Is that kind of what you're saying? So in other words, if there's no ordinance and somebody's parked there, police can come out and say, would you kindly move it, then we have no way of enforcing it.
Exactly.
So the theory would be, if there's deemed to be a situation where it needs to be moved, and the police come out and get a call on it, that they have the authority to do that. But we're not gonna have officers driving up and down chalking tires.
Right, which is the same thing we do with the vacation vehicles. If there's a vacation vehicle that's been parked in front of the house and, you know, the neighbor calls and says it's been there for 6 days, so it's past the time limit, then someone will go out, take a look at that, make note of the time. And so really then the time frame starts from the time that we have notes in our report or whatever. It's not from when the neighbor said, well, it's been here 5 days. Because we can only enforce what we have the proof of being able to enforce. So I would assume, Larry, that we would take that same stance if it had the very same type of situation as the vacation vehicle. So we get a complaint call, officer goes out, notates that it's there, chalks the tires, whatever, and then if it's still there 3 days later or however many days later, then it's subject to being written. I don't know how else that we would have any ability to be able to do that.
Because in the reality, we do have a number of ordinances on the book that we have some discretion on enforcing. So it's not like this is a new thing.
We have discretion in almost everything we do.
Pardon me?
We have discretion in almost everything we do.
Right. So let me suggest something. Let me suggest that we look at doing 72 hours under the theory that we'll only enforce it on complaint. I'll throw that on the table, see where we go.
I think the other thing that you all at least should have a discussion on is if we really want to get these utility trailers off the street, I think we should consider allowing them to be parked in the driveway.
Oh, absolutely.
I agree with that.
Because at least that's a compromise in having a place to put it, because right now, it says that it has to be in the side or the backyard. Well, I think there will be cases where if you allow them to park it in the driveway, it will get off the street, because there's an option to put it somewhere. So I think that's at least something for
Right, that makes sense. I mean, personally, I'd rather see the trailer parked in the driveway than somebody's backyard, particularly 30-yard backyard.
Yeah, we're forcing them to park them on the street, basically.
Yeah.
Some people in town don't have a side yard or backyard, they're gonna put one.
Right.
So that looks, I mean, that sounds reasonable, what you just said, Terry.
So to allow
Yeah.
parking for a utility trailer on the driveway.
I mean,
Basically
I agree
delete
with
that
part
last
of what
line.
your ordinance says, as long as it's properly licensed and legally licensed.
Well, yeah, it
Yeah.
can't just be,
But I mean, there's sometimes we get into these, and I know it seems like we nickel and dime this to death, but it's from experience of people coming in and saying, well, and playing that game of, well, you didn't say that in the ordinance, so I didn't have to do that, or, you know, sometimes it feels like you gotta play the catch-all on all of it, and that's why we say sometimes we have to polish these things up after we get them.
sure.
So do we still have the ordinance on the book that a vehicle could be sitting on a piece of property unlicensed, but if it's covered by tarp, it's okay? Is that still in our books or no?
We have never had that on our books, that a tarp secures you from it.
Really?
That's Warren County, that's how they enforce their zoning ordinance, is a tarp, at least when I used to work for them, but tarp or no tarp, if it's
It has
You're
to,
gonna-
unlicensed or wrapped, we cite you.
It had to be inside a building that was at
Inoperable.
least sided by 3 walls.
Yeah, it's gotta be an enclosed structure, and, I mean, because people will, it happens all the time where, you know, people have a junk car, and then they'll wrap 3, you know, covers over it, and then put string around it, and be like, well, you can't see it, and we're like, we know it's the same car. You gotta remove the car. It's still inoperable if the canvases don't make it work.
So
I'm
do
good.
pallets qualify for an enclosure?
As I said to you earlier,
Just checking.
Alderman Delroy, pallets do not qualify, and it is on the list.
Alderman Delroy.
So how about we take a stab at drafting something for next meeting, and then you all can review that before you make a final decision.
For a direction, I'd agree with Alderman Ock. 72 hours sounds reasonable to me.
and then with the idea of the enforcement being done on a complaint basis. Which you
Of
probably
course.
wouldn't put that in the ordinance, but,
No.
but then you do the 72 hours plus your idea about allowing parking in the driveway.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that has to be a part of it.
Good idea.
Any
Okay,
other-
we can do that.
Any other comments on the topic?
Nope.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Next, we'll hear from City Administrator Terry Thorne.
I don't really have anything other than to remind you of the school board, the joint meeting with the school board at the end of the month on the 28th. That will be here. They're gonna come here this time. And I did get response from some of you with topics, so if any of you have topics that you wanna make sure gets on there, if you could get those to me sooner rather than later, then we'll make sure those get included on the agenda.
What time is that, Terry?
6, is it, Melody? Do you remember?
I was gonna say 5:30.
5:30, I
Maybe it's
thought.
5:30.
Yeah, I think
We'll
it's-
send out a reminder
Okay.
the first of that week, but it was early. But I don't recall exactly what the time is.
Any comments or questions on that? All right, I believe Ms. Walters is not able to be here tonight, so are you filling in?
Sure, I'll
All
fill
right.
in for her. Later on this evening, you have an ordinance that relates to mobile home inspections. A couple years ago, we started the process where before a mobile home could be brought in to be placed into the trailer park, it had to undergo an inspection to make sure that it met certain criteria that we wanted in our city. The company that was the individual who responded to our request for bids is no longer doing those types of inspections. In fact, they've stopped doing inspections altogether. So our staff, Mike and his employee, are taking over those inspections. They'll be following the same guidelines and checklist that the inspection company was using, and will be charging the same fee that they were charging. So we're simply bringing that in-house because we don't have another option. And what the ordinance will do is allow us to charge that fee and get that set up so that they can go out and take a look at those before they come into town.
Okay. Any questions
So
about that?
in the planning meeting, we talked about, the whole concept of inspecting homes. Now, that also applied to trailers, correct or
It
no?
will apply, yes,
Okay.
at change of occupancy, once we get that all put together, it will apply to every residence
Okay.
in the city.
Did we not talk about possibly June inception for the change of
The
permit?
department heads have not had their planning meeting yet. It's in a couple weeks. So at their meeting, what we will do is take the discussion that you all had and put that into reality of how you get it started and how you enforce it and how you make it work on a regular basis. So I think our target date was to start July of this year, but I can't really say that until we sit down and get all the nuts and bolts put together to make sure that we're ready when we actually start it. So I'll have a better answer for you after the department head planning meeting.
Do you know, do we have requests, very many requests to bring mobile homes into the city?
We haven't had a large volume of them, but we do have some, and it's usually related to homes being brought into the trailer parks.
For owner occupied or for rental?
It doesn't really make a difference. If it's coming into the city and it's a used mobile home, then it is subject to the inspection prior
Yeah, I
to it
understand
being
that, but what I
brought.
mean is, are they bringing them in for rental purposes or for, to live in themselves, or?
Typically, what we have seen have been the owners of the park or other owners bringing them into the mobile home park, either for rental purposes or to bring them in and set them up and then sell them. But at the time that we're inspecting them, we really don't have knowledge of what the end purpose is going to be.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other
You're welcome.
questions on it? Thank you, Terry.
And then next, I have the recommendations from the Tourism Commission that met on January 22nd. They recommended $5,000 be paid to the Tribute to Veterans Memorial. That was for a portion of the cost to bring electricity to the site. They also had recommendations for a payment of $600 to Dairy Queen for their interstate attraction signs, and $1,200 for Warrenton Oil for their interstate attraction signs. They have two different ones. So that's two $600 reimbursements. So total recommended was $6,800 to be dispersed.
Any questions on those? Entertain a motion to approve the recommendation of the Tourism Commission in the amount of $6,800.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Okay, who said it first?
Mike can have it.
We'll go with Alderman Shell Harvey, seconded by Alderman Miller. Roll call vote?
Alderman Schultz?
Yes.
Alderman Shell Harvey?
Yes.
Alderman Ock?
Yes.
Alderman Miller?
Yes.
Alderman Deloy,
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 with one absent.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Finance Officer Dana Velasquez.
Good evening, Mayor and Board. We have before you tonight a list of claims for payment totaling $230,210.29. So I'm here to respond to any questions you might have on that list of claims and ask for your approval.
I do have a question. I apologize, I didn't email you earlier on, so I might catch you off guard. So could you explain to me the dollar amount that we're paying to the Sheriff's Department, $4,813.26? Is that for a full year? And is that the cost per prisoner per overnight that are there because of city charges, or what is that exactly?
It is, and it is a reconciling procedure that happens at the end of each year. So throughout the year, we, as we have people housed next door, we have charges that go through our courts. So on a monthly basis, we pay them whatever we collect from people that appear in court. And at the end of the year, they then reconcile the total amount of space they have used for our inmate purposes. And then we just pay up the difference that we haven't already paid during the year.
So this is not a yearly figure, this is whatever the shortfall was that we owe them.
Correct.
So what are the circumstances where we have issues in the ordinance that makes us put somebody in jail overnight? What's the rate, I guess? Is there a rate?
I believe it's $50.
It's Yeah.
55.
55, I believe, and I can't remember, to give you some historical perspective, I think at one point in time, our reconciliation was 50 or 60,000.
It was a lot, yes.
$50,000 or $60,000 a year was our reconciliation. We have an agreement with the sheriff. We collected and Dana did a good job explaining it, but we have basically a fee that we charge to pay for board bill and to offset the cost of the sheriff's biometric verification system, the bioscan, the fingerprint machine. It allows us as a court to adopt it. We have a written agreement with the sheriff, and basically anything that is not credited from that $2 surcharge of court costs, we turn over to the sheriff for biometric verification. And so basically we get a credit from our court costs that we then can use up to a certain amount of board bills, and then above that, we pay the reconciliation. So like I said, at one point in time, we worked really hard to reduce our jail costs and to reduce our incarceration rate. Most of the people that are sitting over there are people that have failed to appear 3, 4, 5 times, refused to come to court. We try to get them in front of the judge as soon as possible. We have a telephone system where the jail calls the judge, or the dispatch calls the judge if somebody's locked up, so we try to get them. Everybody gets their bail reviewed within 24 hours. So it's something we really take a lot of pride in, making sure we're not incarcerating people unjustly for failing to pay fines. We only incarcerate people that either do something inappropriate in court, which occasionally happens, where they say something, they react inappropriately, and the judge holds them in contempt, or they just do not show up for court, and that's after 1 or 2 summonses to appear. So the reason I wanted to talk about it is because we've worked really hard to reduce our jail costs and really not put people in jail at all for failure to pay fines, well before Ferguson started, all the reform that came out of that.
So if the reconciliation's about $5,000, what's the total cost? Well, do you have any idea? Realizing we're getting credits for other things we're doing.
It's probably $6,000 or $7,000 total. I don't think we collect. Yeah, it's a couple $100 a month. It's not a significant amount. It slides. The more ordinance violations we prosecute, the more that's generated in that fund.
So is it safe to say we went from 60,000 to less than 10 or?
Oh
10?
yeah. Oh
okay.
yeah. There was one point in time where our incarceration costs. I mean, we had real problems getting people to show up to court. We still have problems getting people to show up to court, but you know, Judge McDonough kind of takes some different approaches now to try to make sure that they show up to court and at least explain their responsibilities. And we also we have the city community service program we use a lot too, which we've been doing for 10 years as an alternative to incarceration and fines, and the police department supervises it. And I think we've done some really good projects, and you know, helped out at the fall festivals, cleaning up trash and whatnot. So.
Okay. Any other questions? Helps pay for some sheriff salaries. Sheriff employees' salaries.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the claims amount, $230,210.29.
Second.
Motion made by Alderman Schultz, seconded by Alderman Deloy. Roll call vote.
Alderman Shell Harvey?
Yes.
Alderman Ock?
Yes.
Alderman Miller?
Yes.
Alderman Deloy,
Yes.
Alderman Schultz?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 with 1 absent.
See how I did that, Gary? Avoided that question.
Yeah, I had to do something. But
The next on the agenda are the financial statements. These are financials for the period ending 12/31 of 2018. So halfway through the year, you'll notice that general fund revenues are showing down slightly, about 62,000, which is really just more a timing issue. We're still waiting on the lump amount of property taxes came in January, so you'll see those numbers rise in January statements. You'll see sales taxes running just slightly below, 2% below budget, but really, again, just a timing issue as that quarterly reporting catches up. Police fines are running in 63,000 above the conservative budget for this year. In expenses, the general fund operating expense is about 294,000 below budget. Again, 172,000 of that is primarily related to personnel costs, salaries and things for positions that may be open our timing on different positions or changes in wages. Then we also have some supply and maintenance accounts, various ones that are slightly overbalanced or underbalanced for the year, and then capital expenditures. Again, some of the projects we haven't started on, so that spending is below budget for the year. As we move into the water and sewer fund, you'll see that the revenues are about 94,000 above budget. So that applies across both water and county sewer charges year to date. Industrial sewer was just slightly below budget, and again, just a timing issue related to the coke plant, and it always slows down a little bit this time of year. So we'll see those numbers rise again in January. Again, there's a major capital project in the water and sewer fund that is under an engineering phase right now. Capital sales tax fund, which is primarily the pool park project right now. We have interest about 12,000 above budget. So capital spending, again, shows a little bit below budget, but again, it's just finishing up that project over there, and we're just about done with things. Were there any questions regarding those December financials?
We're good.
And the next item on the agenda is the annual report for the economic development sales tax. So when that sales tax was approved, the state requires that we produce a calendar year report on the revenues and expenditures related to that sales tax. So, and again, that's just the economic development portion of it. That's not the other sales tax that was approved, the additional capital sales tax. Okay, so just related to the economic development sales tax, about $764,003.12 in revenue over the 2018 calendar year. Expenses, which that tax can only be used to pay the debt service on the new interchange, $495,898.50. So keep in mind, that's half the debt service. The other half shows paid out of the capital sales tax. So it too generates about the same amount of money. It does generate the same amount of money as the economic development sales tax. So this report went to the state to show that we are in compliance for detailed reporting for the year.
Yeah, because when I looked at that, I was looking at the financial reports from the interchange fund. They don't quite match up, because the report that went to the state looks like it has this huge profit, but if you go over to the interchange fund, it doesn't show that because it's showing capital expenditures.
Yes.
But they're not really supposed to match. They're two different things.
Two different things, yeah. So the only expense is the debt service payment here in this particular activity.
Right.
Okay. Let's see.
Any questions? We'll entertain a motion to approve the 2018 annual economic development sales tax report.
So moved.
You guys are killing it. You just said it, yeah. We'll go with Alderman Miller first this time, second by Alderman Shell Harvey. Roll call vote.
Alderman Ock?
Yes.
Alderman Miller?
Yes.
Alderman Deloy,
Yes.
Alderman Schultz?
Yes.
Alderman Shell Harvey?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 with one absent.
Okay, and we are moving into budget cycle. So we would like to go ahead and schedule a Ways and Means Committee, a work session meeting. It's proposed to be March 5th, before the regular board meeting, the first Tuesday in March. So the start time would be 5 o'clock. If that's acceptable, we could get that on the schedule.
You said March 5th?
March 5th?
March 5th at 5 p.m.
Does that hour give us enough time?
This is just where we talk about water and sewer rates, which
Okay.
are pretty much predetermined, and employee increase rates. So
Okay.
it's usually pretty short.
Okay.
5 o'clock?
5 o'clock.
You guys be able to make that?
Yep, she said.
5 o'clock p.m. Yeah, I guess I shouldn't have to say that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure it ain't AM?
I could do that, but I don't think I'm going to be here.
I was just say some of this on our. I think that sounds good.
Okay,
Anything else?
that's it.
All right. Next, we'll hear from the Chief of Police, Larry Elder.
Good evening. Apologize in advance if I run out of voice. The first item I have for you is an update on our community outreach program. If you'll remember back to when Lieutenant Weber came in front of the board and made a presentation saying all the things we'd like to do with our community outreach, we've since started up that program, and since he spoke to the board, we've accomplished getting a liability waiver created and ordained by our legal counsel for participants in our activities. We reached out to the Junior Honor Society and the Student Council at schools to get kids who are interested in taking more of a leadership role in this, and then scheduled a meeting on the 28th of last month. We had 12 students show up with some parents, and they were interested in taking a leadership role in the community outreach program. They were interested in coming back at least once a month to brainstorm and also to donate their time into helping us make the community outreach program successful. We also scheduled our first event, which is an open gym night, on February 23rd at the high school gym from 5 to 7 p.m. So there'll be basketball, dodgeball, all that kind of stuff. That's going to be our first event. We got Coca-Cola donated some beverages for this event. I think that's about it for right now. That's an update of where we're at with that. So after February 23rd, we'll know how the first event goes.
And just to recap that, it's February 23rd at the Morton High School.
In the gym.
From 5 to 7 p.m.
And anyone who wants to participate will need to complete the liability waiver, which they can get from the station here, flag down one of our officers, talk to an SRO.
Excellent.
And also, as another benefit in this brainstorming sessions, they came up with a bunch more activities that they would like to do. The students did 3-on-3 basketball tournaments, raffle whereby if you're out and you see a police officer and you flag them down and talk to them, they'll give you a raffle ticket, and then once a month we draw that.
Nice, no.
So on and so forth.
Good interaction.
The other items I have for you are 4 policies for approval. Naloxone and prisoner search are revisions. The language in naloxone is due to the training period, and prisoner search is to comply with the latest CALEA standard. DWI and juvenile are new.
Any questions on those policies?
No, but I do have a question. I don't know if you can answer that. But on the Narcan, when you read through the monthly police reports, we're using that product, that procedure, whatever you want to call it, quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Is it more than what's typically seen in the community, or do you have a feel for that?
Is it more in...
Well, I mean, when you read through and you maybe have an officer using that 3 or 4 or 5, 6 times a month because of situations, is that pretty typical of what communities see?
Well, and not only that, but we err on the side of if you're unconscious and unresponsive, you're going to get a dose of naloxone if you meet the criteria. So
Okay.
not every time that someone gets a dose of naloxone are they suffering from an overdose, if that makes sense.
That answer.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the following policies for naloxone, prisoner search, DWI enforcement, and juvenile operation policies.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Alderman Ock, seconded by Alderman Deloy. Welcome vote.
Alderman Miller?
Yes.
Alderman Deloy,
Yes.
Alderman Schultz?
Yes.
Alderman Shell Harvey?
Yes.
Alderman Ock?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 with 1 absent.
And that's all I have.
Appreciate it, and your voice
Thanks, Chief.
maintained it, so thank you. Thought the counselor was going to take over for a while, maybe here another hour.
I thought for a minute I was gonna have to give everybody's report. Buckle up.
Good
Mayor,
idea.
I have a question for Terry before we get to the end. Sure. downtown sidewalk project?
Engineers are working on preliminary plans. I believe that within the next couple of weeks, we should get an opportunity to see at least what the proposal is. And I don't know what the outside date is for that, but I believe the last that Brandy and I talked about it, which was last week, within a couple of weeks, we should get to see at least a preliminary draft. We really set them back in what their original proposal was, which was basically to put the ramp at the side of the building. And when we actually visited there, the day that they were out here and we looked at those plans, it puts that too far out into the street so that vehicles that were turning at that corner, it would create a safety issue. So we asked them to go back and look at a way to put the ramp actually in front of the building, and it would be almost in the center between the old Yesterday's building and then the building next door. So in that area of the front of the sidewalk, to try to push the sidewalk back a little bit and put a ramp there that could then ramp up to get people up onto the sidewalk.
Is that gonna be lowered down? How, if you're talking about a ramp, it looks like it would be awfully steep.
Well, it wouldn't be a ramp straight up, it would be one that probably made a curve and went however they managed to do that. The answer, regardless of where we end up putting the ramp, at solving that problem with there being such a large step from the curb, is to bring the level of the street up. It won't be, there is really not a viable way to lower that to get it down to where it needs to be. But it is acceptable and looks like it fits within what needs to happen to bring the level of, because if you look at the street, there's a hump in the middle.
Yeah.
So being able to bring that street up, and what they were gonna go back and look at is how that affects the stormwater flow. That was the big question about being able to do that. So they're working on the project. It's one of those projects that's not an easy situation to solve because there's so many components that all have to work together, and it's really not a good situation to be trying to solve. But it sounds like they've really got a handle on how it needs to be put together. Now it's just finding the way to make that successfully come together. But we should be able to see something within a couple of weeks, preliminarily.
Yeah.
But in either case, you're probably gonna lose a few parking spots in front, because the ramp will come farther out.
The hope is to be able to push it in
Okay.
and not lose parking. We may lose one there because there's gonna have to be a ramp to get from the level of the street up on, even if it's short, up onto the sidewalk to get up on the ramp. So it's possible that that will take up one parking spot, but the plan is to save as much parking as possible. That's part of the goal.
Sure. I have one final question for you. Update on the downtown sign that we were talking about putting up on 47 and Main Street.
Our city attorney is working with Mr. Baker to get an agreement put in place. We want to use the same type of agreement that we used, if you recall, the light situation out by the water tower. So he's working with Mr. Baker to try to get an agreement put together so that we can then locate the sign.
Okay, thank you.
So we're still working on it. We haven't
Okay.
forgotten it.
Okay. That's all.
All right, thank you. To the bills to ordinance section, so I will entertain a motion for the first reading of bill number 01-19.
So moved.
Is that you, sir? Motion made by Alderman Schultz, second by Alderman Shorten.
An ordinance amending section 500.040 subsection C, miscellaneous charges of the municipal code of the city of Warrenton, Missouri relating to mobile home inspections.
I'll entertain a motion for the second reading and passage of bill number 01-19.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Alderman Miller, second by Alderman Deloy.
An ordinance amending section 500.040 subsection C miscellaneous charges of the municipal code of the city of Warrenton, Missouri relating to mobile home inspections.
Roll call vote?
Alderman Deloy,
Yes.
Alderman Schultz,
Yes.
Alderman Shell Harvey,
Yes.
Alderman Ock,
Yes.
Alderman Miller.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 with one absent. Before we go to adjournment, we did this one other time, and I appreciate it. I just wanted to recognize that candidate Dyer's in the audience, and I appreciate her coming to the meeting. So, thank you very much. I will entertain a motion to close the regular Board of Alderman meeting at this time.
Second.
Motion made by Alderman Shelby, seconded by Alderman Schultz. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned, folks.